before we actually walk through the close, I want to go through the biggest mistakes made during the close. And these are pretty significant, and I see them all the time, and they cost us a lot of sales. And for some of you, this is going to be, a review. You've seen this before. But even if you have, I think these are things that you almost have to hear 100 times before they kind of sink in and get with you. So I'm going to walk through the top 5 mistakes made during the close, and then we're going to actually walk through the close itself real time. So you can kind of see how all of these things come together. So the number 5 biggest mistake is you don't set it up correctly. Now, a lot of this starts where I mentioned earlier with the understanding you need to walk into that appointment with your goal of leaving there with the signed contract. Because if you don't, you have no chance of doing it. So that tone needs to be set from the very beginning. And you set this up in various ways. So I'm going to walk through some of the things that I really mean when I talk about setting it up correctly. The first one's pretty obvious. You make sure all the decision makers are there. Because one of the things we all know is if someone is involved with the decision making, whether it's a wife or husband, a partner, office manager or whatever, if they don't see the presentation, you are not going to close the sale. Do not trick yourself into believing otherwise, because it simply doesn't happen, because all that person hears is dollars and magazine. They don't know the little things we do. So make sure that everyone who needs to be there is there. Now, obviously, when you're dealing with bigger bureaucracies like car lots or hospitals or things like that, you simply have to walk through a rotation of people to get the decision made. Just know that, and know that's a situation where you're not going to close on the first time. It has to be handled differently. What I'm talking about today is really that business where the person you're meeting with is the decision maker. They run the business, they make the calls, and you're having that opportunity. The second thing to do is set up the fact that you're going to ask for the sale from the very beginning. And one of the things that I like to say right out of the box is just very simple. I do what I call an internal preview. If you've ever done any public speaking or professional speaking or competition speaking or anything like that, there's many parts to a speech. One of them is called the internal preview. And that's where you let the audience know exactly what you're going to be talking about. So I like to do this at the start of the presentation and simply say something to this effect. Hey, first of all, I want to tell you how much I appreciate you taking time to meet with me. We're both very busy business owners, and I know time's valuable, but I think you're going to find that what I have today is worth your time. What I'd like to do is show you a little bit about our magazine and our parent company and show you how we're able to help businesses like yours grow. I'm going to show you a quick video that goes into some of the nuances that we do that you might never even notice. I'm going to take you on a tour of one of our products. And then at the end, I'm going to ask you to come on board as a partner with me. Does that sound like a plan? And they will always say yes. And guess what you just did? You let them know that your plan is to leave there at the end of the day with a contract. And you've bound yourself to pursuing that partnership because you told them you were going to. And on top of that, they gave you permission when they said, yeah, that sounds like a plan. So now everyone is on the exact same page before you move forward. And then you go with slide 1 and you go from there. So that's the way to set that up at the beginning. Another thing you want to do to set it up, and this is so important, is when you finish the presentation. And the presentation finishes when you ask the question, can you think of a better way to reach this market? That's the end of the presentation. Just like in legal dramas on TV and in real life, attorneys are not allowed to bring up new evidence during the closing arguments That needs to be the same approach you take with your presentation. After you finish that part, don't be talking about new things with the magazine from that point forward. The presentation is about informing them of the magazine and telling them how we can help their business. The close is about making the decision to buy very easy. And if you throw in new information during the close, you muddy the water and hurt your ability to close the sale. So that time period from the end of the presentation to the objection phase should always be focused on just making them feel comfortable with buying. You've already sold them on the product. If they say they can't think of a better way to reach this market, there's nowhere else you can go beyond that. If you're the #1 football team in the country and you beat the #2 team by 70 points, you're still #1. You don't go any higher. And it's the same thing. When they admit there's no better way to reach this market, stop selling. Stop selling. From that point on, it's about making them feel comfortable with the buy. And there's a couple of simple things you can say to do that. The first is, if money wasn't an issue, would you want to be in this magazine? And you ask that right after the second bookend question. If money wasn't an issue, would you want to be in this magazine? And what that does is that takes every objection besides money off the table before you go forward. If you start the close with something else in their mind besides money, you're going to struggle because you don't have control of the close. So just remember that. As soon as you ask can you think of a better way to reach this market? They say no. Then you simply say, if money wasn't an issue, would you want to be in the magazine? Then once they say yes, they're always going to say yes. Then you simply say, my job now is to find a campaign that will help you grow your business at a price you're comfortable with. The word comfortable is a very, very powerful word because it makes you feel more comfortable. And the whole point during this phase is to make them feel comfortable with signing an agreement. So that's the next thing. And then as far as setting it up, there's one more thing I want to mention here, is the community awareness ad. When you're doing your magazine tour, make a big deal out of the 8th page ad. Make a big deal out of it. And make a big deal. And this is the language you use. I want to call your attention to this little ad here. It doesn't look like much, this 8th page. But we call that our community awareness ad. It makes sure that everyone who lives in my neighborhoods knows you exist. Because that's the most important thing. They have to know you exist. So if we don't do anything else here today, we need to make sure you leave here with one of these. And that plants your seed for your final salvo in your close. Because you're better off leaving with a signed 8th page ad than a callback on Monday for a 2-page center spread. Because that 2-page center spread is not going to happen. So you want to prepare them for leaving there with an 8th page ad at the very least. And during the tour is the time to do that. Okay, next up, number 4, too many options. You give them too many options. Our presentation is designed so that the customer never has to decide more than one thing at a time. Because we as human beings, if we have to decide more than one thing at a time, our default is to decide nothing. And that's what happens with the clients. If you want to ensure that you don't sign a client, leave them with trying to decide whether they want a 3rd page or a half. Because they will get so hung up on picking the wrong size that they'll simply never choose anything. You have to limit it down to one option. So with this, make sure you've narrowed it down to one thing. And our presentation does that because what do? We pick an ad size. We give them 3 choices and ask them if you were going to pick one of these, which would be best for your business. And then we ask for the sale. The closing question should always be a yes or no question. I mean, a closing question is not, well, what do you think? A closing question has a yes or no answer. And so you want to have it, here's our best option, yes or no. And if they say no, or they say, I need to think about it, then we'll talk about that here in a minute. But it can't be, what do you think? Do you think this is something for you? You know, blah, 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 because that's where you lose it. Okay. If they can't narrow it down, I mentioned this a second ago. If they can't decide, and we've all been in this situation before. Oh, yeah, I want to be in the magazine. Oh, gosh, I want to be that expert. I can't wait to write those articles. But I just can't decide if I want a half page or a third page. And I guarantee you, not a single person on this call has ever closed one of those. Because what happens is they get so hung up on the secondary decision, they never make the primary one. So the way to handle that is you, as the marketing expert in the room, need to make the decision for them. And here's what that sounds like. Hey, I know you're having trouble deciding between the third and the half. I tell you what, I'm just going to take the half page off the table. Because what that tells me is you like the half page size, but you don't like the price, that you're more comfortable with that third page price. I want to make sure we leave here today with something you're comfortable with. So then you immediately say, let's look at the third. Let's do the third for now. I'll upgrade you this first month to the half page so you can see what it looks like. And if you decide down the road that you want to go that path when you're more comfortable with the magazine, then we can do that. But let's just go with the third for now. So if we go with the third, are you ready to be my expert? Boom, yes or no answer. I took the other one off the table. I made that decision for them. Because they're looking to you as the marketing expert to lead them in that. And it also shows that you're caring about their business. Because if you leave that there because you want them to get that half page ad because it costs more, that doesn't send the right message. But if you take the more expensive one off the table, it seems like you're actually trying to help them when in reality you are, but you're also trying to make the decision easier for them, knowing that it's going to change. Okay, number 3, over discounting or dropping the price without changing the offer. I was glad to hear somebody on one of the calls the other day reference this from the meeting in Vegas, because this is huge. You never want to drop your price without changing what you're offering. Because if you do that, I mean, we've all had that situation where we've gone to buy a used car or something, and say we show up and we're planning on spending $20,000. We're planning on spending $15,000. And there's a car for $20,000. And we're talking to the salesman, no, I can't do that. No, 20,000 is as low as I can go. And then you start to drive away and he comes running across the parking lot and says, oh, by the way, I just talked to my manager and we can do 15. You may buy the car, but you're going to hate it. And you're always going to resent that salesperson because you know that he was trying to screw you out of $5,000. So it's the same with us. If you offer the quarter page expert for $380, 30% discount, I'm just pulling numbers out of my butt here, but you offered that for $380 and they said, I'm going to have to think about it. And you immediately said, well, would you give me $345? You're that person. You're that salesperson. If you're going to drop the price, you have to drop the package. And we'll see more when I walk through this, what that looks like. And so basically what we're going to do is we start with the discounting and then we work our way backwards, reducing the package and the price until they find something that they're comfortable with. Okay, number 2 mistake, not addressing objections. This is one that drives me insane. And you all have heard me say this before, and I'm going to say it again and again and again. There are only 13 objections that you will ever get. There's really only about 4 that you get regularly. And why in the world we don't spend a weekend learning how to answer all 13 of those objections is beyond me. Because, I mean, if you master what you're going to say when they say this for all 13 of those objections, your closing percentage is going to go through the roof. If you want to absolutely drive me insane, call me up and say, hey, I get this objection all the time. Because that means that you're putting no effort in to figure out how to answer it. If you get an objection once, it's shame on you, the client. But if you get it again, it's shame on me. Because once I get it, I should come home. I should write down what I wish I had said. If I don't know what I wish I'd said, I should call my division manager, my market manager, my coach, write it down, practice it, practice it, practice it. So the next time you do a presentation, you pray to God they give you that objection so you can show off your new skill. And that should do that. And there's only 13. You do that for all 13 and you're ready for any situation. So, but I don't understand why more people don't do it. But that's make a commitment to do that. And so the first thing, if you're handling objections, if you've asked the objection, especially when the objections are coming up in the close, like we're talking about here, if you ask that question earlier, if money wasn't an issue, would you want to be in the magazine? Then you know ultimately any objection you get after that's money related. And it's good to have that knowledge because that puts you in control. And then you simply say, earlier you said if money wasn't an issue, you'd be in the magazine. Can I assume you're just not comfortable with that price? Think about that for a second. Can I assume you're just not comfortable with that price? That is an empowering question to the prospect. If I were to say, can I assume that price is too high? Remember, everybody operates under insecurities. That client is going to think you're attacking his business and don't think he's a good businessman. If you say, can I assume you can't afford that? He's going to feel like that's an attack, and it makes it harder for him to make a decision. But if you say, can I assume you're just not comfortable with it? It makes it seem like you respect his acumen as a business owner, and you know he's going to make a decision that's right for his company. He's just not comfortable with that price. And that's such a different way of handling that situation. And then once they say they're always going to admit they're not comfortable with it, then you simply say, are we in the ballpark, the parking lot, or in outer space? Because what you're doing with this question now is you're trying to figure out if your first offering was close or not. If you're in the ballpark, you make a couple little changes. You change the digital from pro to premium. You save him $200 and you ask for the sale again. If you're in the parking lot, maybe you drop both the digitals, you come down in ad size and you go from there. If you're in outer space, then you drop back to a really smaller ad with no expert and all that kind of stuff. But asking that question gives you a direction for which way you need to take the conversation with the close. And then finally, you validate their concerns and you have a conversation about it. And you circle back and you have that conversation. You start the whole process over again. Remember, when you're in the close, it's not confrontational. They want to be in the magazine. You want them in the magazine. Confrontation occurs when people want two separate things. In this case, they want you in the magazine, or they want in the magazine, and you want them in the magazine. So it becomes a no-brainer that you should work together to find that point where he's comfortable. Because then both people win. Both people win, and that's what the closing is all about. Okay, next up, the number one mistake is not asking for the sale. I see this all the time. If you don't ask for the sale, you will not make the sale. Simple as that. I know we use this analogy, but I think it's so apropos. When you have two people that have dated for a long time and they're going to get married, they don't get married because they both suddenly decide to get married. They get married because one person asks the other one. Otherwise, that relationship just continues going on forever. Someone has to ask in order for that marriage to happen. It's the same thing with this. You can't hem and haw. And I see people who think they ask closing questions who simply do not ask closing questions. And now, how do you know if your closing question is a closing question? It has a yes or no answer. And you ask the same one every time. If I do 100 presentations, and unless I already have an expert in that category, my closing question is always, are you ready to become my expert today? Has a yes or no question. If I ask anybody on this call, what is your closing question? And you can't immediately give me the answer, you don't have one. You don't have one. And odds are, if you don't have one, you're walking out of a bunch of appointments without ever asking for the sale. A closing question is not, well, what do you think? And it's amazing to me how many people ask that as a closing question. Well, what do you think? You think this is something you might want to do? Is there anything else I can tell you about the product? And it's like you're sitting there on the edge of your seat just hoping that they volunteer to pull out their credit card and sign the agreement. And it just doesn't happen. You have to ask. Use the same closing question every time, and it needs to be a yes or no. And then after you get your answer, if it's not a yes, you work back and you negotiate to something else and ask again. Our top people often ask for the sale 7 or 8 times before they get a sale. And it's not that they're, if you ask 7 or 8 times and you don't change the package, if somebody says no to or somebody doesn't give you an answer on a half-page expert, and you simply come back and say, well, you ready now to be my expert? You ready to be my expert? You ready to be my expert? That's not asking because you haven't changed anything. That's annoying. But if you change it at a lower price under the guidelines of we're working towards something you're comfortable with, it's okay to keep asking because you're asking. Maybe the half-page expert wasn't something he was comfortable with, but the quarter page was. So you want to ask for the sale again. And you want to continue to do that. Okay. Any questions before I actually walk through a presentation? Or close, actually. Okay, Meredith sent me a message saying, can you send us a list of the objections, of the 13 objections? Yes, I can. I have that. Several of us worked together in Vegas to write that up. I will try to get that out in the next day. I have it handwritten right now, so I'll try to get it typed up because you do not want me sending you anything I have handwritten.
John,
And then Jan asked a question. So you suggest to reschedule the meeting when everybody's not there? Absolutely. Unless it's a big bureaucracy. Sometimes with a big bureaucracy, you have to meet with people who can't make the decision. But when you do, don't count that as a non-sale because you never had a chance to make that sale. So when you're calculating your closing percentage and that sort of thing, you can't really count that one because you weren't with somebody who could make a decision. And that's where we get frustrated. Because if I were to meet with every business in San Antonio, all 12,000, 13,000, however many there are, if I met with every single business, but I always met with the Janitor, guess how many sales I would close? None. So why should I beat myself up over that? You only really count the presentations that you do with somebody who is capable of saying yes. And that comes into play. Okay, I will, Tim. I'll take care of that. Jim, did you have a question?
Yeah, John. Okay, say I haven't brought up the perks, or say I have brought up the perks, like first add upgrade to the next size, or a perk like business profile, which usually reserve that for 24 months. Say I brought it up or I haven't brought it up. When I say, look, there's something that is a perk that I can take off the table to lower the price that you're comfortable with, like business profile. Of course,
Right.
I'd hate to do that, but
If there's other things you can do, and we'll walk through that here in just a second as we go through the close, and we'll see how all of that plays out. But yeah, I mean, you can do that. If your first offer was at 30%, and you're in the ballpark, they say you're in the ballpark, and you think going to 35, 36, 37% is all you need to do to close that sale, then that's where you would take off something you already do. You just simply say, hey, now, one of the things I like to do, and I will tell you, this is not official BBM, but it's something that that I think can work in this situation. If I'm dropping that price down, I sometimes will just simply say, hey, I tell you what I can do. Right now, we're looking at $970. I can knock $50 off of that and get it down to $920. That's going to save you about $300 or about $600 a year. Always use dollars because $600 sounds like a lot. And say, but if we do that, I'm only going to be able to commit to 2 articles a year instead of 4 as the expert. I mean, truth be told, most of our experts don't write their 4 articles anyway. So I haven't really changed anything, but as far as the integrity of the transaction goes, I dropped the price for less. And so that maintains the integrity, or you take away the business profile. I mean, and there's so many tools. That's why presenting it as a bundle with digital and sports and the print gives you literally 1,000 ways you can drop that price by tweaking the digital here or there, tweaking the percentages. There's so many things you can do, but if you drop the price, you have to change the package they're getting. If they're going to pay less, they should get less. People respect that. People respect that. And it's good for them because they get to decide. If it turns out those extra 2 articles are really valuable to them, they then will pay the extra more. They'll pay the $50 more to keep them. But it puts that power to make that decision in their hands, which shows the respect to them that you should have.
I can knock off that Silverado about $1,000, but I'll have to leave off the trailer hitch.
Yeah, leave off the trailer hitch, or I'll have to go right now. It's got that hi-fi stereo in there. I can knock off $1,000, but we'll just trade that out for a standard radio system. I mean, it's that kind of thing. People respect getting less for paying less because that they respect that. Okay, Meredith, did you have a question? Okay, cool. Well, now what we're going to do is I want to walk through the presentation in the close in just kind of show you how a lot of the things we talked about sort of play out. So let me share a screen here with you again. Okay, so you should be seeing, let's stick here on the presentation. Is everybody seeing now the bringing people together at the start of the presentation? Okay, so what I'm going to do is move the Zoom stuff over to my side screen. Okay, this is where I do that setup. Hey, I appreciate your time. I know time's very valuable. As a business owner, I can fully understand that. What I'd like to do today is just simply walk you through the product and our parent company, show you what we do that can help your business in ways nobody else can. I'm going to show you a video that goes into some of the nuances about our product that most people don't even recognize. I'm going to take you on a tour of the magazine and break it down and really kind of go into detail about the little things I can do to help your business. And at the end, I'm going to ask you to come on board as a partner with me. Does that sound like a plan? And then boom, and then I'm often moving with the regular presentation. I've set the tone for it. So I work my way through. Move this out here. Go through the presentation. Blah, blah, blah. And if you haven't watched my workshop on the presentation, do so. Because one of the things you want to do as you go through this presentation is you want to brand us as A, this is how we help your business, and B, we do it better than anybody else. And so one of the things I talk about in that is on every single slide, talk about what we do, talk about how it impacts them, and talk about how we do it better than anybody else, and do that every single slide during the presentation. So I come through here, blah, 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 blah. I get to the, that works. And we talk about, we're going through the presentation. I get to the tour. Now, obviously, if you're in person, you want to physically be showing the magazine and you want to use a pen to point. Don't use your finger. Because inevitably, if you use your finger to point at the magazine as you go through the tour, you're going to switch fingers and it's going to be your middle finger that's pointing, and you're going to be flipping off the customer for most of the tour. And while it's a little thing, it's very distracting. We've all been in the other side of that, where somebody's been showing us something and without them realizing it, they're flipping us off. And so use a pen and it stops that from happening. Now, and then you walk through the tour, paint them in, and then do that line during the tour. When you get to that 8th page ad, hey, I want to show you this 8th page ad here real quickly. It's our community sponsor ad. Now, what that means is this ad guarantees everyone who lives in my neighborhood knows you exist. If we don't do anything else today, let's make sure we leave here with one of those, because the most important thing is they know you exist or they can't use you. Boom, and then you go on. And that plants that seed. Okay, go through the tour. We get to the end. We get to this slide. And now this is where the presentation comes to an end. Because it's if you break our presentation and our close down, there are two different functions going on. The presentation is all about making them understand how we can help their business and to get them excited about it. And so during that stretch, you need to be high energy. You need to be exploding with how excited you are about everything we do with this magazine. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to bring your excitement for the magazine to the table so they pick up on it and they get excited about the magazine. And that's the presentation. Now, when we go to the close, your entire demeanor needs to change. Because the close is no longer about excitement. The close is about empathy. Because now what's working against you is that client's insecurities and fear about making a big decision. Because we all are terrified when we are asked to make a decision about something we don't understand, and the business owners we're meeting with do not understand advertising. So your job from this point forward is not to sell them on the magazine. You've already done that. Your job is to make them feel comfortable signing a contract. So here's this slide. Now, one of the things that I used to struggle with asking the question, Can you think of a better way to reach this market? It just didn't flow smoothly. And so I often avoided it. But it is such an essential question for setting up the close that you got to figure out how you're comfortable asking it. Because think about what it does. They've already said this is a market that's important to them. And now they've said they can't think of a better way to reach it. When you put 1 + 1 equal, you get, they recognize they need to be in the magazine. And having them recognize publicly by saying out loud, yes, this market's important to me and I can't think of a better way to reach it, is very powerful for putting them in the right frame of mind to go forward. So here's how I ask this question. I've already gone through all these things before, and I'll say, hey, we've already covered all this, but I just want to emphasize all of these are ways to give my readers a reason to choose you over your competitors. We've put a lot of research and marketing science into developing this magazine to be the best tool ever created for helping a business like yours. Can you think of a better way to reach this market? Boom. There you go. And it's just so, and then that sets it up. If you set it up like that, they're never going to say no because you painted that picture. Their insecurities are going to prevent them from saying no because they're afraid they're going to look like an idiot. So now you've gotten them to publicly say this market's important to them. They can't think of a better way. Now you ask the question. Well, let me just ask you, if money wasn't an issue, would you want to be in the magazine? This is a power question. And what I mean by that is if you don't ask it, the power at the end of the close is in the hands of the customer. If you do ask it, the power is in your hands. Now, the power to do what, you might ask? To initiate the money conversation. If you don't ask this question, at the end, the customer has the power to initiate the money conversation or not. And what happens is we often say, yeah, I'll call you back on Monday, and that call never happens. So just know, if money wasn't an issue, would you want to be a part of the magazine? They're always going to say yes, and now you've got control of the close. You're the one calling the shots from now on. So then you say, well, my job now is to find a campaign that you're comfortable with at a price that'll help your business grow. And so then you go on to the next slide, and now we begin the close. Now, at this point, my tone's going to change. My tone's going to become about, empathy. I'm trying to work with you now to help you find a decision you're comfortable with. So, first thing is the ad size. Now, this is where we're going to have two different things because some of you have been taught what we call the big package close, and others have been taught to let them pick an ad size. Both work, and everything I do going forward is going to work either way. So, let's start with the basic, let them pick an ad size. On this screen here, what you do not want to do, flashing neon sign, what you do not want to do is put pressure on them to pick an ad size. Because remember, they're already struggling internally, whether they are informed and educated and smart enough to make a decision about this. And if you pressure them to pick an ad size, that is just going to feed that insecurity. You want to ease that insecurity. So the way to do that is simply say, hey, we've got over 100,000 businesses like yours advertising in our magazines. So we've gotten a pretty good sense of what type of ad size is right for each business. take a look at these and see when it comes to ad size, how you see your business. And then let them read them. Now, what did I just do? By saying we've got 100,000 businesses just like yours, he's no longer on an island. He's no longer just one guy who doesn't understand advertising making a decision. He's one of a group of 100,000 or more business owners that have made this same decision. So I'm normalizing the decision for him to be in the magazine. So then you let him look at it for a couple minutes. And you say, hey, does anything jump out at you? Or you know what's the ad size fit your thing? If he doesn't come back with an answer, you move on. And I'll tell you how to do that in just a second. If he does come back, what do we all know the most common thing he's going to say is? It depends on the price. Well, duh. Laugh at that a little bit. Not laugh at him, but laugh at that. I mean, all you got to do when somebody says it depends on the price, you just look at them and say, well, duh. If it wasn't for the price, everybody'd have the 2-page center spread. So, of course, it depends on the price. But for right now, let's think about what your ideal ad would look like. And we can deal with the price in just a few minutes. Boom. And go on. Have them pick a size. Now, if they don't pick a size within 3 seconds of the second time you ask it, move on. And what you need to say is, you need to make them realize it's okay not to pick one. And you simply say something to the effect, oh, no big deal. I deal with a lot of business owners that have never done this type of advertising before, and they're just not sure. It's a hard decision. So let's do this. I know a lot of plumbers really like this half-page size because it gives them a really strong presence in the magazine. And then when they write their articles, they put it on the same page and they get a whole page for the price of a half. So let's start with this half page. And if it turns out that that's more or less than you're comfortable with, we'll go from there. Boom. But once again, you show them respect. The worst thing you can possibly do is say, well, I tell you what, you look like your business is struggling and you're pretty damn poor. Let's just go with that 8th page ad. And yet we do that so often, and it's so darn insulting. Show the business the respect by starting with an ad that's high quality. If they can't afford it, let them let you know that. So in this case, this example, we're just going to start with the half page. Now, those of you who are migrating towards the complete package close, then what you would say here is you'd go through this screen pretty quickly. And you just simply say, hey, we've got hundreds of campaigns to fit any size budget. Boom, and you go on. Okay? So you go to your duration page. Don't spend more than 5 seconds or 10 at the most talking about duration, because duration inspires their insecurities. Every business owner is convinced they're a fraud. Every business owner deals with imposter syndrome and is convinced that it's only a matter of time before all their customers figure out they don't know what they're doing. And you don't want to feed that by talking about longer terms. You want to keep this very, very simple. And I like to actually minimize the 12-month. I just simply say something to the effect of, hey, we don't do short-term campaigns because they don't work. Shortest we'll do is 12 months. We call that the trial campaign. That's usually for businesses who aren't sure if they're going to survive or not, or they don't know this is the right market for them. Most of our folks go with the 36-month because, quite frankly, it's a whole lot cheaper, and they know that there's never going to be a day when this market's not important to their business. And then I go on. As simple as that. So I made the 36 seem normal. Everybody tells you they want to be extraordinary, but no one really does. They want to be ordinary. And so you're normalizing that decision. Then you talk about, hey, just so you know, we also offer something that I don't think anybody else offers, which is inflation insurance, which is what I call rate protection. Because everybody's, worried about inflation right now. I said, what's really cool about it is you have no way of knowing what gas is going to cost 3 years from now, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now. But I can tell you exactly what your ad in the magazine is going to cost, because your price will never go up with us. That's pretty cool. Okay. And then I slide on to the video. Now, if you're meeting in person, if you're meeting at RGP, obviously show the video while you do the price. If you're meeting in person, I would encourage you to have 2 devices, maybe your phone or something like that, that you pull the pricing on. And let them watch the video, because this is a closing video. It educates them about the expert contributor, and go from there. Now, while they watch this video, or if while they watch me, if I only have 1 device in person, I'm going to go back and work on the custom solution. Now, what I would suggest for those of you doing actually for all of you, I would suggest that you look at this right here. I've got this is the same package I'm going to offer every single business. Now, I've done the complete package for a long time. So if that's the close you're working with, every single business I walk into, this is the first screen they see, unless they're in a position for multiple magazines, and then I go for more than that. Now, notice what I've got here. And I have this saved. If I come over here to my packages, right there, the very first one, which is the only one that I personally created, which I would encourage you to do. Don't worry about all these globals. They get so darn confusing. I wish they'd get rid of them. But you need to create a package. If you haven't done so, reach out and I'll help you do it. It takes like a minute. Create a package that includes everything. And that's what I have here. So this first offer I have now, I call this, I usually have this saved as well, my trial, my discount, and my best value. Okay. Usually have that saved in advance. I have this pulled up before I ever walk into the meeting. I've got that pulled up to save time. Now, what do I have in it? I've got a 12-month full page with no discount, with Facebook Pro, with Google Pro, and because I can sell sports, I've got the sidebar and banner with no discount. I've got my second one is the 36-month with a 30% discount on everything. My third one is the expert contributor with the 30% discount on everything. Now, if in the example I just gave a second ago, if we were going to go with the half page, all I have to do now is simply change this full to a half. It's going to replicate across the board, and I'm ready to go. So literally, it's going to take no time whatsoever for me to put my first pricing down. So then I show them the solution, and I say, here's what we're looking at. Let me go back to the full first. I want to go with the full. So I'm going to close that here. I want to start with the full. Okay, well, it'll replicate it back across there. I'm going to show this in its entirety. So, a couple things you'll note. I want you to notice about this screen. I want you to notice, first of all, the pricing at the bottom. Okay. No, I call this the Goldilocks effect. And psychology shows that most people do not ever want to choose the most expensive option. Most people do not want to choose the cheapest option because internally they know they're not getting a good value. Nobody ever gets good value on cheap stuff. They always like the middle, and it's called the Goldilocks. Our first offer, the trial, is the bed that's too hard. Our second offer in the discount is the bed that's too soft. And then comes the expert with all the bells and whistles at a medium price that is just right. So there's a lot of psychology built into these three options. Notice also that in my package that I have saved, that's always part of when I show the client, I have these three things. I have artwork included. Businesses who've advertised with other mediums know that artwork can be very expensive. If I buy a TV commercial, there's a good chance I'm going to pay $3,000 or $4,000 to have the commercial made. If I buy a traditional magazine ad, there's a good chance I'm going to pay $1,000 to have the ad created. So I make a big deal of reminding them that with us, the artwork's included, that we have no additional digital admin fees. Now, what do I mean by that? If you look at most digital packages, if I go to like RevLocal or somebody that sells exclusively digital, they have to make their money somehow. So they add an admin fee. We make our money off the magazine. And I kind of, to help you really kind of understand what that's like, is let's imagine you take your car to a mechanic and the mechanic fixes it. Let's say your water pump goes out and the mechanic fixes it, and you look at your bill. On your bill, you're going to have the parts, how much each of the parts cost, the water pump and all the extra parts. And then you're going to have the labor. And often the labor is going to cost more than the parts. That's the way it is with the other digital companies. With us, it's like you go to your brother-in-law who's kind of decent with cars and knows how to put a water pump on. He puts the water pump on and doesn't charge you anything because he owes you a favor. And so all you paid was the parts. That's the way our digital is. We don't add the big admin fees because we make money with the magazines. And then finally, I put inflation insurance. Now, I don't put these three things on there for the client. I put them on there for me to remind me to talk about them because those are things that come into play with the close. So then the way I would present this is I would simply say, go like this. Okay. First thing we'll look at is our trial. That's our 12-month campaign, which, like I mentioned, it's mostly for businesses who don't know if they're going to be around for a lot longer or who don't know that they can reach this market. With that, you're going to have our best Facebook option, our best Google option. You're going to get the sidebar and the banner on our sports page, and your artwork's included. There's no additional admin fee, and we have that inflation insurance we talked about. Everything we do comes with those. And that's going to run you $2,400 a month, $2,403. Now, most of our people go the longer term because they know this market's always going to be important to them. So they go with the 3-year. And if you'll notice, that drops the price significantly. You get everything you were going to get with the other. You just bring the price down and we throw in a business profile. With that, that's going to be $1,690. Now, that is more than $700 a month cheaper, or close to $9,000 a year you save just by committing to that longer term agreement. And since this audience is always going to be important to you and branding works better the longer you do it, you can easily see why most people take that option. Now, what I really need is an expert. I go to all the homes in Old Bridge and Bluegrass Estates and Colonial Heights, and all of those homeowners have questions about plumbing, and I need an expert to answer their questions. So I'd love for that to be you. So our best value is really the expert contributor. With that, you're going to get your picture in every magazine as the expert. You get to write up to 4 articles a year showing people you know what you're talking about. You're going to get that business profile. All that together is about $20,000 of extra space. You're going to get the best digital in the Facebook and the Google. You're going to get both the sidebar and the banner on the website. All of that's going to run you $1,968. If you were going to pick one of those, which one would be best for your business? Now, notice how I really made that answer very easy for them. I downplayed the trial. I threw in the discount, and then I really, really drove home the expert contributor. And I asked the question. I didn't ask which one do you like. I asked which one would be better for your business. If you ask which one they like, they're going to take the middle one because it's cheaper. But if you ask which one's better for their business, they will recognize that all these bells and whistles on the expert is better. So once again, I'm only asking one question at a time. I'm asking them to decide between these 3 options. The moment they come back and say, well, the expert, of course, I just simply say, so are you ready to become my plumbing expert? There's my closing question. Now, notice I didn't get into, at this point, I didn't get into first appointment discounts or anything like that. I just left those off. Now, why did I do that? Because that gives me flexibility going forward. Because remember, one of the things that you can take away as part of the package is their ability to put off making a decision. Because that's something you're taking away. So here's what that looks like. So are you ready to be my plumbing expert? That's my close question. Now, what are they going to say? They're going to say one of 4 things. Always, it's going to be one of 4 things. The first one is, yes, where do I sign? That's the one we like. Yes, where do I sign? Okay. The second one is going to be, no, not ready to be your plumbing expert. Which we don't get that one often. They usually sidestep it with, I need to think about it, which is the third one. Or the fourth one is, I need to talk to so-and-so. Those are the only 4 answers you're going to get here. Yes, no, I need to think about it, and I need to talk to so-and-so. 3 of the 4, you have the same response. 3 of the 4, it's the same response. The one I need to think about, it's tweaked just a little bit with the addition of 1 extra question. I'll tell you what that is in a second. So for the I need to think about it or the no, all you do is say, hey, just a minute ago, you told me that you'd want to be in the magazine if money wasn't an issue. Can I assume that you're just not happy, not comfortable with that price? Boom. Guess what I just did? I just started the money conversation. If I had taken, when they say I need to think about it, if I had said, okay, I'll call you back on Monday, guess what? The reins are in their court. The ball's in their court. When you call them back on Monday, here's what's going to happen. They're going to look down and see your phone number. And they're going to say, okay, I can do one of 3 things. I can ghost them, not answer the phone, and avoid the money conversation. I can answer the phone and make up some strange, bizarre reason why I'm not going to be in the magazine and avoid the money conversation. or I can answer the phone and have a very awkward, uncomfortable conversation about my business and its finances. They're never going to choose that third option. That's why we very seldom get to have the money conversation later on. Because you put them in, we put them in charge of initiating a conversation that they don't want to have. And that's never going to end the way we want it to end. On the other hand, by simply saying, just a minute ago, you told me if money wasn't an issue, you'd want to be in the magazine. Can I assume you're just not comfortable with that price? Starts that conversation in a very comfortable way. They're going to come back and say, yeah, that's just a little more than I was planning on. And at that point, you can either say, how much too much is it, which is the standard, or you can just say, are we in the ballpark? Are we out in the parking lot? Or are we way out in outer space? And let's say, for example, they say, we're in the ballpark. Let's start with, they say we're in the ballpark. All I need to do is come back to my custom solution, come over here. The only one I'm worried about now is this final one, the expert. So then I deselect those. I scroll down and I'm going to change their Google from Pro to Premium. And their Facebook Pro to Premium. Boom. I come back now. I display it. I can say, okay, let's look at this expert contributor. If I just downsize your digital a little bit, you won't get quite the level of exposure. By doing that, I can drop your price from 1,960 down to 1,808. So that's going to save you about $150 a month, or $450 or $1,800 a year, just simply by going with the slightly lower digital package. Are you more comfortable with 1,808 than you were 1,960? Of course they are. It's $150 lower. They may not be comfortable enough yet, but they're more comfortable. And if they're still not there, if they say, ooh, we're getting close, but we're still not quite there yet, then I come back up here. I just come up and I say, okay, well, let's do this. Let's just go from that full page to a half page. And I'm going to change my discount here to 35. Okay. And then I come up here and I said, okay, I tell you what, let's look at this. I want to make sure we find something you're comfortable with. Here's what I can do. If we take that full page and we bring that down to a half page, for now, we can always go back to a full page later as you get more comfortable. And I basically, if I do that, and you can give me an answer today, because time's valuable. It's valuable for both of us. We don't want to waste a lot of time getting this done. If we can decide today, and we go from the half page or the full page down to the half page, I can do that. You're still going to be the expert plumber. You're going to be the only expert plumber that gets to write articles. You're going to have your face in the front every month. Everything's the same, except your ad's going to be a little smaller to start out. And I tell you what, I'll even go ahead and upgrade you to a full page that first month so you can see what it looks like. But we'll start with this. I can get that down to $1,249. That keeps the digital, the Facebook Premium, which has the retargeting, and the Google Premium, which increases your traffic. I can get all that for $1,249. Are you ready? If we do that, that's going to save you over $700 a month just by making that change. Are you ready to be my plumbing expert today if we do that? There we go. And I keep stair-stepping that down. Remember, what I'm doing is I'm walking them back to find something they're comfortable with. And let me tell you, $1,249 a month doesn't seem nearly as high when I started with $2,400 as it would have if that was the first thing they saw. And then I keep bringing that down. We're still not quite there. Okay, let's walk a little bit further down the path. I tell you what we can do. Let's do this. I'm going to drop your Google down to just our basic. I think you should have a little bit of Google. I'm going to keep Facebook at at the premium because I think it's important that you get that retargeting. I'm going to then drop your sports back to just the sidebar. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. If we do that, notice I also click the discount in. If we do that and you can make a decision today, that gets us down to 1,081. We're almost down to $1,000 a month. Are you ready to be my plumbing expert? And they still say no, and you go, okay, so let me ask you this. If I can get you something that's going to keep you that expert and keep you a strong, dominant package with digital and sports for under 1,000, would you be good to go? Yeah, I think I would. So then all you do is come back in, come over here, see what it looks like if you go to 40. I go to 40. It's going to be 1,061. No, that's not going to do it. So let's keep this at 35. Let's go ahead and bring the half to a third. Boom. That's 976. I come back now and I say, okay, if we bring that down to a third and I give you that half page the first month, then are you ready to be my plumbing expert? That gets us under $1,000 and you're ready to go. Now, see what I'm doing? I'm just moving this all over the place and I can come all the way down. So let's go back to the original. Let's say I go back to where I started now. And I'm coming at it again. And let's say this time, I'm going to start with both of them again. Let me take this back to a full. Oh, I got a little thing in my way here. Hold on. Okay, take that back to a full. Okay, take this back to 30. So now we're back where we started. Actually, I'm not there yet. I got to take go back to the Facebook Pro and the Google Pro. Okay. And the sidebar and banner. Okay. So then this time around, let's say they say, okay, there we are, 1968. So I'm displaying the solution. So let's say this time around, I ask, hey, are you ready to be my plumbing expert today? And they say, I need to think about it. And now I say, are we in the ballpark? Are we out in the parking lot? Or are we way out in outer space? And they come back and they say, we're probably out in the parking lot. We're not really close on that. I'm like, okay, so I know I need to make a big change. And I just simply say, hey, let me ask you real quickly, what's more important to you? A high digital exposure or being the expert? And they come back and they say, oh, I want to be that expert. So then I simply just come in here real quickly and say, okay, so if we do this, let me think this through for a second. If I go back and I change the, basically you can hammer it out loud. You can either do it quietly by yourself or you can just talk them through it as you go along. So I'll go, if I do that, and let's go ahead and make this here, take that to that. And then up here, I'm going to take this from a full to a quarter. Boom. And then I come back and I say, okay, I know it's important for you to be the expert. So I'm going to go ahead and deselect these other two because I don't want them to muddy the water. And I'm just going to come back to the solution. I'm going to say, okay, here's what I think. I want to keep a relatively good digital presence. So what I want to do is I'm going to keep you as the expert, but we're just going to do a quarter page from now. We can always go back later as you get more comfortable with the magazine. You're still going to get your headshot in there. You're still going to be the only plumber. You're still going to get your business profile, your 4 articles a year. We're just going with a smaller size. I'm going to keep Facebook and Google as just our basics. So you got that added exposure. I'm going to keep you on the sports site because I think that's going to be really good for you long-term. No artwork fees, your artwork's included, no additional digital fees, the inflation insurance, and we can do all of that for $769.90. If we do that, are you ready to be my plumbing expert today? I just knocked $1,200 a month, $15,000 a year off of your price, and you still get to be the expert. Are you ready to be my plumbing expert? Boom. And so you adjust how far down you come to basically all of that. So let's say I've gone all the way. Let's say they said where either I've worked my way all the way down, or they've said something to the effect of, we're way out in outer space. I don't spend that much in a year on marketing. Okay. Then all I come in and I say, well, I tell you what, then let's do this. Let's just go ahead. You won't be able to be the expert, obviously. But if we do this today, if you can give me an answer today, let's see what we can do. Okay, quarter page. Change this to an 1/8. Okay. Take Facebook. Let me keep my Facebook there. This 40. Google 40. Okay, and 35. And so I think that's right. Let's take sports off there entirely. Okay, let's just have do this. Said, hey, okay. Remember when we were doing that tour and we talked about the community awareness? The most important thing that we can do is to make sure everybody in this neighborhood knows you exist. So let's just do this for now. If we go with that 8th page ad that gets you in the magazine regularly, we'll throw in some Google impressions, which feed that. We'll also do that story about your business. The artwork will be included. There's no digital admin fee. The inflation insurance, like we talked about, is there. And we can do that for under $300 a month. Let me go ahead and write that up because I said, the least we can do today is to leave here with a community awareness. And so do you want to put that on your credit, on your Visa or your MasterCard? And at that point, you're down to the basics, but they need that, and they know they need that because they've already said that by answering those 2 bookend questions. And then you put the onus on them to stop you from writing the contract. Because they've told you in so many words that they like the magazine and want to be a part of it. You have to make it easy for them to make that decision. And then you go from there. And then obviously the last salvo is just to do away with all the digital. And say, if we do away with all the digital, we can do 202. I'm going to go ahead and write that up. Do you want to put it on your Visa or MasterCard? I would pick whichever one gets you the most points. And then you leave there with the signed 8th page ad. Okay. I know that is a lot, but it's really not. And one of the lines I didn't use today, and I like to use, I would encourage you to, when you show that first price, the high price with everything, just simply say, hey, I have no idea what your budget looks like, but I'm going to show your business the respect it deserves. And we're going to start by showing the most complete package we have to offer. And we're going to start at the top of the mountain. And if it turns out that you're just not comfortable up there, then you and I will walk back down the mountain until we find something you're comfortable with. And then you go through this process to find something they're comfortable with. They want to be in the magazine as soon as they answer those 2 bookend questions. You want them in the magazine. You're both trying to accomplish the same thing. You just have to find the point where it's comfortable for them to do so.